Hello, and welcome to Armin's Armchair Adventures. This is Jack. It's actually Armin. Okay, so why did I move to China? I went to China with my head filled with all types of stereotypes, all types of prejudices, as you can imagine. I went there with my head filled with this idea of China as a very underdeveloped place. In hindsight, it sounds so close-minded of me, but honestly, that's the way I thought China would be before going to China for the first time. That's why I went there as a trial basis in the beginning to see how it goes. So, imagine I was resting in this beautiful, calm beach in Sydney, Australia, and the next thing I know, I was in China, in Guangzhou City. I mean, the contrast couldn't be more stark from Sydney, even though Sydney is a modern and multicultural city, to Guangzhou with all the skyscrapers and the fast pace of life. It was on a next level. It was super fast, incredibly modern, and dare I say, futuristic. It frankly blew my mind away. So that was 4 years ago, and now I'm not in China anymore. But the reason I'm making this video now is because the memories are still fresh in my mind as I've left China quite recently. One big warning about this list is that it's completely subjective based on my own personal experience. So if you've had a very similar or a different experience of living in China as an expat, I'd love to hear from you guys. Let's get into it. Reason number one, super modern infrastructure. Let's start with my first stop in China. My first impression of Guangzhou was that of shock. Having come from a developed country, I had my own set of preconceptions about the country and the level of development that I assumed it would have. But my first visit to the CBD just blew my mind away. It was a chilly February evening, and we walked to the park just behind the Canton Tower. And from there you had a vantage point that you could see all these skyscrapers with striking modern design, and all the streets were truly vibrant and had a very lively atmosphere. Now, I'm not really saying that merely having all of these tall buildings is a true measure of success for a city, but for me that was my first impression and it has stuck to me to this very day. Reason number two, abundance of work opportunities. After literally a few days that I had moved to China, I slowly started to realize something. There were just so many opportunities to find work, especially in the education sector. Now, I was actually quite lucky to have my best mate there with me at the time, which was really fantastic. And also the support of his family who were already established and they knew all the ins and outs of the city. And that also gave me a big advantage, for sure. But I imagine even without all those initial contacts, you'll just build it up as you go. There are always many permanent and part-time positions available if you look for them, and the pay is usually quite good, at least in my case it was, and my colleagues were always quite nice and friendly. Next up on the list is the abundance of opportunities to socialize. So, as a foreigner living in a big city in China, what you sooner or later realize is the abundance of opportunities to meet and befriend locals and expats alike. Many of the social circles in the expat community overlap, which is really awesome. And I've been really fortunate to come across so many interesting people from China and all over the world during my time in China. As a matter of fact, I found my wonderful wife in China, a blessing in my life for which I thank my lucky stars every day. You never know what the future holds. As for the locals, let me illustrate the level of friendliness with an example. When the corona first started to get real in our city, there was a big shortage of face masks. And even the university I work for, they couldn't provide me with any face masks because they also didn't have any. But then one of my students' family, they stepped up and they sent me some masks by post. It was truly touching, especially at that time. Just a caveat here for mingling with the locals. There's always a big barrier in terms of the language, of course, but there are many locals who can also speak English, and naturally, this barrier will dissolve as you learn some basic Mandarin. Reason number 4, traveling hub paradise. Okay, so I made this list before the corona pandemic, and back then it was a big factor, at least for me. And I'm pretty sure as soon as the international travel picks up again, it's gonna be important once more. So, the major cities in China, especially Guangzhou, are ideally located and quite close to major travel destinations. Places like Vietnam, Thailand, Malaysia, Japan, the Philippines, and many more. Not to mention all the beautiful natural and historic sites literally in every province in China. It will take a lifetime to visit them all. And my only regret now that I'm no longer in China is not having explored more of the country when I had the chance. Number 5, work-life balance. For me personally, this was a very important aspect of my life in China. You know, having worked full-time jobs in other countries, I really appreciated the extra free time that I had suddenly carved out into my days. So what do you do with the freed up time? You can do whatever you want, things that actually matter to you. This can be a great gift, especially for a creative person who can finally get things done with the bonus free time and energy. Of course, this is not true in case of every foreigner who comes to work in China, and I'm not generalizing here. In fact, for many locals, it can be a very different story, but I'm just sharing my own personal experience as an English teacher in China. I actually didn't have very long teaching hours, and I was quite lucky to have really nice and enthusiastic students. They made the working hours just breeze by. I would actually look forward to working days, so I get a chance to interact with them, teach them, and learn from them. Reason number 6, higher purchasing power. Purchasing power is the power of the money that you earn to get you the goods and experiences that you want. Your salary in China may be lower than, let's say, if you live in a Western country, but then your expenses are also lower. They kind of balance each other out. In fact, with the same or even lower salary than you'll get in your own country, you can have a much better lifestyle living in a nice big apartment and enjoying all the nice restaurants and bars and lots of traveling, all without the cost burning a hole in your pocket. Number 7, high-tech convenience. Taobao, WeChat, Alipay, Didi, these are just a few apps that make your life in China super convenient. In China, people are already living the cashless future. Of course, many of the same concepts are taking root in different countries. But at least when I first visited China, they were much more advanced and more widely adopted there. Every purchase is as easy as just scanning with your phone or smartwatch, and the delivery system is incredibly fast and affordable. It will be literally cheaper to order food and get it delivered to your doorstep than going out to the actual restaurant. Also, when it comes to robots, drones, or the bullet trains, for example, they are all leaps and bounds ahead of their counterparts in many other countries. Reason number 8, culture, language, and history. As a history buff, this has always been and continues to be a source of inspiration and fascination for me. Chinese culture is quite ancient, and even though through the Silk Roads it has always been connected to the rest of Eurasia, it has also developed some unique features in isolation. As you get to know the culture and the language, you learn about few interesting features not shared in many other cultures. Even the way people think can be different, which is quite interesting. You know, I was actually reading the other day about the biggest radio telescopes being built in China. And it is really fascinating to think about this. They may very well be the first to receive and maybe communicate with the extraterrestrials. Okay, I think I'm getting a bit sidetracked here. Speaking of history and culture, if you like museums, there has been quite a heavy investment on museums in recent years. So even if you are living in a small town, you're bound to find many well-maintained museums and galleries showcasing the local history and culture. Lifelong friendships and connections for the future. No matter if you stay or, like me, leave China at some point, you've already gained some valuable experiences by living in a foreign culture which is different from your own. Having learned the idiosyncrasies and the way people think in a different culture and gained valuable insight. Having made great memories and established good relationships and friendships for life. We are living in an increasingly globalized world. It's always nice to have local friends from different countries. Reason number 10, food and drink. Well, it should have been really the number one reason. The food is just so delicious. There are so many different cuisines, so many different dishes and flavors, and the endless amazing varieties of tea. I mean, tea comes from there after all. For many expats, that's one of the main things that they miss when they leave China. Okay, so I'm gonna tell you a little story here about when I first came to China. I was this clueless foreigner, maybe I still am. So basically I ended up in a hospital literally few days after I arrived. And my only advice to you is don't underestimate the spiciness of some of the Chinese food, especially the mala. It's so delicious, but like everything, you must really slowly learn to appreciate it. Before living in China, I couldn't use chopsticks. I had no idea about all types of Chinese food. And last but not least, if you like me love tea, then you'll feel right at home. Okay, so that's it. 10 reasons why to move to China. At least for me. Thanks for staying with me this far, and I will make more stuff like this in the future, so please do subscribe. On a whole, I would say life in China is definitely not for everybody, but for a good number of people it is becoming an increasingly attractive destination. I'd also love to hear your stories. If you are now or have ever been an expat or even a local, please do share your opinion. Especially as an expat though, why did you move to China in the first place? And what keeps you there if you're still living there? Thanks again everyone, and take care.